Hey folks, ThatOneDanGuy here. So I just wanted to give you guys a little intro into what we're doing here. As if you've seen before, I am doing a series of one-on-one interviews with some of our different players and staff members, things like that. And this afternoon, I got to sit down for this episode with Coach KayJay, Kieran Playfair, and it was a really great time. We got to talk about his history as a coach in both CS:GO and Overwatch, what some of his coaching practices and mantras are, what he does with the team currently, and what the CS:GO team for RBG Esports is currently doing. Because headed into this conversation, we were 6-0 for the league in ESEA Advanced, and we were very excited about it, very happy with it. So getting to hear firsthand from one of the main keys to that success was a really wonderful opportunity. So hope you all enjoy our conversation. This is going to be a continuing series of interviews, so if you have people that you would like to hear from, are specific players or coaches or staff members, feel free to let me know either on Twitter or in Discord, something like that. And if you have things that you would like me to bring up in these kinds of conversations, so I try to cover their history as a gamer. I also try to cover, where does their mentality and their play style come from, things like that. So if you have more in-depth questions that you would like me to include in these interviews, please feel free to let me know. But otherwise, hope you enjoyed the conversation. I certainly did. Well, welcome, ladies and gentlemen. I am Dan, ThatOneDanGuy, joined here this afternoon with RBG's CS:GO coach, Coach KayJay, for a little one-on-one interview. So, how are you doing, sir? Tell the folks at home who you
I'm
are and what's going on.
I'm good. I'm the coach of RBG's CS:GO team. I've been coaching them for about 2 months now, right at the start of the season. So yeah, I've been loving every day here in RBG, but yeah, it's been good. Good ride.
Yeah, it's been an exciting time lately. The team is 6-0, correct, right now?
Yep,
And we've
for
got
sure.
we're recording this on October 2nd, so we've got a match here just coming up this evening. I know our team manager Trace has talked a little bit about that the second half of the season might be a little more difficult. Are you nervous about that? Excited for it?
Um, I'm excited to see where we place. Um, so how it usually goes is the start of the season you get placed against random people, like random teams in the standings or whatever. And then near the middle and the end, you start getting placed against people with the same record as you. So since we're 6-0 right now, we're getting placed against all the flawless teams or like the near flawless teams. So it'll be really, really cool to see where we place and how we do against those sorts of teams in a match environment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And the team has recently been promoted, right? Is within the last season or two, I think.
Yeah, I think not last season, but the season before they won main.
Mm-hmm.
So they won main. They played a season in advance. I think they did okay in that season, and this is our second season in advance.
Right. So you've been here for, like you said, around about 2 months with the team. I
For
mean,
sure.
what kinds of things have you seen them improve on to get to this record, and how do you think they're going to continue in this season? Like you said, you're getting into some of the harder teams, so this is going to be a little more of a proving ground for them, perhaps. I know we were
For
talking
sure.
a little bit before cameras started rolling. There have still been some very close matches.
Yeah.
But what kinds of things do you expect the team to what do you think will really be their trial here?
Mm, I feel like we have the ability to be number one. It's just if we show up, if we prepare well, if all things are clicking and trying to make that more constant. So it's not like an up in air sort of thing, but it's more like, okay, game day, we know what to do to perform, and we can perform at the top of our ability. So I feel like their individual abilities are all up there. Our team abilities are all up there. Our basics are all up there. It's just, is it an off day or is it a good day? So they're just
Mm-hmm.
trying to make that more constant. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, in a game, so I've played a bit of CS:GO myself. I try to watch some of the majors, things like that, and I
Sure.
know for me it always feels like a bit of a coin flip sometimes. Your strategies come in, your individual skill, but at the end of the day, sometimes it's that factor of are you comfortable, are you hot in that moment? Because some of those
Yeah, for
gunfights can
sure.
be so tense and so split second. I think that's what so many people love about CS:GO is that it's all so calculated and so fair sort of on either side. I
Yeah.
hope, hopefully you would agree. But
Yeah.
so I think that that element of randomness, as much as we can take out of that, definitely
Exactly.
gonna be a
Yeah.
good thing.
Just make sure our basics are not like something we need to think about. They're just automatic,
Hmm.
and then we can just like any given day to perform at the top of our ability is
Sure.
what the
So
goal is at least.
I'm curious, as someone that's worked in coaching for quite a while. I mean, what is your take on that kind of thing, like at large? Because you've been a coach for TSM, for Team Liquid as well,
Yep.
some other very notable teams on your record. So, just give me a little bit of that sense of like, what is it like to be a coach for this kind of game?
So back when I was, because I coached around 2015 with those two teams,
Hmm.
Liquid and TSM, and it was more of like a new thing with coaches and stuff, and coaches and analysts and that sort of stuff. So it was more trying to give your experience and go off the stats and stuff, and like keep everything focused in game. And like, okay, this is what we need to focus on in game, so we need to improve in game. I feel like after I took the break, I have a better idea of like what things need to happen outside of the game that affect in game, and like how like sleep really affects like your performance, and all that sort of like sleep, nutrition, all that sort of stuff really affects your performance. And I feel like I sort of got that from the other teams, but it also, the break I took from coaching really helped uh, cement that and give me that knowledge.
Oh, that's really interesting though, because like I think that's a sports science that has come into competitive gaming recently with the psychology, the nutrition, the like
For sure.
physical regimens, like you talked about. I mean, what made you look in that direction? Like for a different sort of competitive edge, or just something that you're personally interested in, or?
A bit of both. Like, I never played at a top level, so I didn't have like that super top level experience. So I needed to find something that gave me the edge in coaching and gave like a team a reason to pick me up instead of someone else.
Sure.
I felt like that, like my stats side was super solid, and I just wanted to add something else. So I decided to do a bit more sports psychology, that sort of stuff, just to give me that sort of edge against other people.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. That's a really interesting aspect of it all. Though, what goes on outside of game time
For
can
sure.
impact so much your performance and your psychology, like you talked about. Solidifying that mentality headed into the game so that you're in the same space every time, so you can produce consistently. So that's really cool. I mean, are there any little tidbits of like or fun facts or something like that that you want to share? I don't want to get into your industry secrets necessarily, but
Uh, um, Something that we started doing, or some of the players started doing, is meditation, and I feel like meditation is like the hidden OP
Mhm.
in high level performance as well, because it just helps you think straight, clears your mind, and like being able to clear your mind whenever you really want really is a really good skill to have. And I feel like meditation is the best way to work on that.
Sure. No, that's really interesting. So I dabble in that myself. Like I've
For
studied a
sure.
little bit as far as the psychological effects, and like just tried to implement it into my own regiment sometimes for things like that. I'm curious, how did the players take up to that? Gamers, not necessarily always the people you expect to sit and find a moment of zen, but what did that
Yeah.
look like for them?
Well, I feel like at this level, the players are just like eager to learn. They're all young. They all just want to do what they can do to be a better player, right? Because they're no way like they're bad players. No way they're like the best players. Like they're right in the middle. So like they know that there's stuff they need to add to their everyday things to be a better player. So like when I mentioned meditation and visualization, that sort of stuff, they really took to it, or at least some of the players really took to it, and it was like right up their alley. Like they were like, yeah, I actually really had a hard time clearing my mind before, but now it's a lot easier and that sort of stuff.
Huh. That's awesome.
Yeah,
I'm a
for
little bit surprised that they so
sure. Yeah,
readily like uptake that kind of thing, because that can be a big change in your lifestyle, or just kind of a
for
weird
sure.
headspace to get into. Kind of pardon the pun, but
Yeah.
that's really interesting, and they find it beneficial.
Yeah, as far as I know, yeah, at least.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's really interesting. I wouldn't have considered that, especially for CS:GO. Because it can
Hmm.
be so spontaneous of an event, but I guess at the same time, you know, being able to clear your mind when you're in that 1v1 situation or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, no, that's really cool. So you said that you like kind of looked into meditation and nutrition and those things as a way to get like a competitive coaching edge. But can you just give the folks at home like a little bit of a brief history of your coaching experience and maybe your gaming experience at large too?
Sure. So started doing analyst work 2014, 2015-ish. Did it more as like freelance of like shoving my content into teams' faces where like, hey, you want this? Here, take it. Just like not with a team or anything, just like shove my stuff in their faces and stuff. And then around I think it was like start of 2015, Liquid approached me, wanted me to be head analyst, assistant coach for the CS:GO team. I of course said yes, jumped headfirst into a which was a really fun experience.
Yeah,
Worked with
that's
them,
definitely a hard one to turn down.
yeah, for sure. Worked with them for about I'd say a year. Went to a few lands with them for the CS:GO team. Um, Parted ways with them. I think end of 2015, maybe start of 2016. Joined TSM. Worked with them for like 4 or 5 months with their CS:GO roster, and then left TSM. Decided that I needed to change things up, and I was getting a bit bored of CS:GO at the time, so I moved over to Overwatch. Coached top tier Overwatch for maybe a year, maybe a year and a half, 2 years, something like that.
Oh, really? Okay.
Did that, and then decided to take a break, joined the army, and then life got simpler and gave me more free time. So
Hmm.
here I'm back.
Sure. So I'm gonna jump all over that Overwatch comment though, because that's near and dear to my
Go for
heart.
it.
I'm a big Overwatch fan. What kind of crossover did you see between the two games? Because I mean, they're both team based, they're both objective based in that regard, sort
Hmm.
of, but definitely different games.
Oh yeah, for sure. I feel like I started Overwatch when it came out, or like soon after it came out.
Hmm.
I feel like a lot of the players at that time, a lot of the pro players at that time were League of Legends players, maybe like casual CS:GO players, but they mostly understood the ideas behind um, team comps, synergies, using ults together, and that sort of stuff. Whereas I come from CS:GO, where it's more of like, this is how you aim, this is how you move around a map, this is how you peek corners, and that sort of stuff. So I felt like me being able to teach the players how to actually aim and actually how to like win gunfights based on like how the map is, high ground advantage, that sort of stuff. Really gave me a good edge against more of the like the MOBA based coaches and players
Hmm.
for sure.
Yeah, that's definitely a very different angle, and that's something that you see so often now. Like, I just watched the Overwatch League Grand Finals just this
For
weekend,
sure.
and you see so much of that happening in like the little 1v1s that they take all the
Hmm.
time of those mechanics and knowing which corners you can peek and which ones you're going to have the advantage over your opponent, and or what is this weird cheeky angle that you can take that they won't expect you from. That's awesome.
Exactly.
That's so interesting to hear, like especially from the start of the game though, because it
Yeah.
was so much centered around how do you make these heroes just work together?
Yeah. I feel yeah, it was mostly just like, oh, these three characters work together. Let's just play these three characters. Whereas more like back then at least, it wasn't really like based on aim and like individual skills. It was a lot more
Mm-hmm.
team based. So
Hmm.
at least now it's a bit different, and now it's I think it's a bit of both. But before it was a lot of just abusing like different combos with ults and stuff.
Right, finding which character is the most broken right now.
Yeah, exactly.
So, was there anything that maybe you learned from Overwatch that you are bringing back to CS:GO now?
Um, the biggest thing about Overwatch when I was there, since it was like a new game, all the pros really were open minded,
Mm-hmm.
and it really allowed me to experiment with a lot of things. A lot of like sports psychology things, a lot of how to coach things. So I feel like CS:GO taught me how the high level works and stuff, and then Overwatch taught me how coaching should work and how sports psychology should work and how working with the players really works. So I feel like that's where I grew the most in Overwatch.
Okay.
So just my ability to relate to players, make them understand like what I'm trying to teach and that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm. No, that's really interesting though, because you have such a fresh player base, like you said, in a new game, and sort of like that blank canvas to start coaching on. That's interesting though that you took that approach as opposed to going back to sort of your roots. I mean, you kind of did with
Mm-hmm.
the mechanical ability and things like that, but that's so nice that it gave you that opportunity to explore and be a bit more creative in like the coaching
For
style.
sure, yeah.
So I
Yeah,
mean,
it's quite nice.
is that anything that you've still kept up with just in your free time at all? Do you still play a bit of Overwatch or anything?
I never really got into playing it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I still keep up with the pro scene a little bit just to see like what players are of mine are still like playing competitively and that sort of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't watch it that much. I don't play it that much. So
Well, I'm supremely curious now if you want to tell us if there's anybody notable that you've coached that's still out there in the pro scene.
um, do you know Baby Bay?
I do.
Coached him for a good bit. Um, coached Banny, who's on Houston, I think,
I'm not sure.
and then coached Sleepy, which is on Washington, I think.
Okay, I think Sleepy actually just became a free agent like today.
Did he? Okay, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. I coached him for a good bit. Who else? I can't think of anyone else, but those are like the main notable ones
Sure,
that I've worked with
that's really cool. Interesting little crossover of worlds there.
for sure.
But so I'm curious. So that's a little bit of your coaching history, but obviously you love video games.
For sure.
So how did that come to be?
Oh,
Do you have a first or like a most memorable experience or some starting point?
I think my starting point in video games was PS3, maybe a bit of PS2, but mostly PS3 is when I started.
Mm-hmm.
I just played shooters on that, enjoyed that, and then uh, got a computer, played Minecraft a bunch, played CS:GO a bunch.
As you do.
Um, exactly, and then CS:GO kind of just piqued my interest a bit more than everything else, and just focused on that, and then here I am.
Mm-hmm.
Still CS:GO.
Yeah, I'm curious why CS:GO over like Call of Duty or Overwatch or Halo or some of these other
Yeah.
like first person shooter games that what about CS:GO really draws you to that?
I think at first it was just my friends wanted to play it all the time, and we were just like, okay, let's just play CS:GO, I guess. So we just played all the time, and then I was like, wait a minute, there's actually like a pro scene, and then they're like, it looks cool and stuff. So I started following that, and I'm like, wow, there's a lot more to CS:GO than it at first glance. So I started really just like diving headfirst into like how do teams work? What are these crazy smokes people are throwing across the map? How does trading work and all that sort of stuff? And I got really interested in that sort of stuff, and then it just sort of just took off after that.
Sure. So was that interest, did that come from wanting to get like your own sort of competitive edge for like your games with friends, or understanding what you were watching at majors, or did you always know you kind of wanted to get into this as like a coaching sort of aspect?
Never did I think I wanted to coach it. I was just more interested in just how it worked, really, right? Like, I play this game a bunch with friends, but once you understand that you know so little, it really makes you want to like learn more. Even
Mm-hmm.
like if at the time I don't think I wanted to do anything with the knowledge. I just wanted to have the knowledge and use it and like just have it and stuff. So it was mainly because of that I started diving in the deep depths of CS:GO.
Sure. Once you realize that there's so many things that you don't know, it's just kind of this endless pool of like, well, how else can I exploit this, or what
Yeah,
other weird
exactly.
thing can I find, or what strange bug will help me get it there just a little bit quicker, or something like that.
Exactly. For
Um,
sure.
yeah, I feel like from my perspective as a extremely casual CS:GO player, there is that it feels almost limitless to me, from my very low knowledge of the game. of how many different like nuances there are, and it feels that way, especially compared to some of the other games like Halo or Call of Duty that I think are probably some of the like most direct competition to CS:GO, and it feels like such a more. I haven't ever like quite figured out how I want to describe it, but it feels almost blocky or like I don't know how to describe it, but it's like all
Yeah.
the mechanics and the gunplay are so crisp. Like it's so minute. It's almost like
Yeah.
playing Smash Bros or something, where like it's divided into
Yeah.
frames, and you hit it or you didn't on this frame.
Yeah, I think that's a good analogy. Like Smash Bros compared to other fighters is really like open, can make your own combos, that sort of stuff. I feel like that's the same way of like CS:GO. It's a lot more open compared to other shooters like Call of Duty or Halo, or like you're saying. It's just like it's more of like a sandbox compared to those games, and it gives you like more options to like try crazy things and make new metas and that sort of stuff.
hmm So do you have a favorite moment from either coaching or playing or watching for Counter Strike?
Um, Favorite moment. I'd say probably going to IM San Jose with Liquid and
hmm
coaching them on the stage there.
Yeah. What was that kind of experience like?
It was, I don't know, it was wild. I don't know. That's my first time really in front of like a big crowd, so I don't know.
hmm
Something I won't forget, but it was good.
Right.
Good
So
experience
up there on the main stage with the team, and
for sure.
how does that work at a LAN event for CS:GO? I assume that surely you can't do live coaching, so between rounds, I assume, or also
I
on
don't remember
timeouts,
back
or.
then. Right now, there was a big update maybe like 2 years ago about like the coaching update and whatever.
hmm
And now it's like during timeouts, coaches can talk. But I don't remember back then if there's any rules or not. So I think it was like all the time coaches could talk.
hmm
But now it's a lot more limited. Because back then they used to have coaches who were IGLs, like calling the strats in the game and stuff. And then Valve didn't really like that, so they said no to that. And you can only talk in timeouts and like help fix small things in the 30 seconds, 30, 15 or 30-second timeouts you have.
Yeah, no, that makes a huge difference. Then you have to have that weight of the in-game leader on one of your players and have
Hmm.
them give them that knowledge beforehand, or either train them to have that reading ability. That totally changes the dynamics of it, because you don't have one brain that just gets to sit there and focus on those sort of like macro level
Focus on that,
things.
yeah. Yeah.
So what I mean, I know that the LAN experience is a really hard thing to quantify for most of the folks I've gotten to talk to in these kind of interviews of what it's like to be up there on
Hmm.
the stage in the lights in the main screen. But how has that been for you? Like with coaching, how many LAN events have you gotten to go to during that time or anything?
I've only been to 3 lands, all with Liquid.
hmm
But yeah,
And
they're two were small-ish, big teams, but like kind of like small. I think it was at California, that big popular land center in California by LA.
hmm
I forget what it's called. But yeah, there's two were there. Then one was in San Jose for the IEM.
okay,
Yeah, yeah. Lands are different. Lands are definitely different.
yeah. I mean, how would you describe that different sense? Like other than being up on stage in front of people, just the gameplay itself,
Um,
or like your preparation for them.
I think the biggest thing between lands and actual like playing at home and stuff is just like you're you never really get comfortable at lands, right?
hmm
Like there's always something that's like not ideal, right? Like, oh, the desk height is not what I'm used to. It's colder than what I'm used to. The chair's different. The space between the next player over is too small or too big or whatever. So just like getting used to that is like what I would describe as like LAN experience. Is getting used to being uncomfortable and being able to play your top off based off like being uncomfortable and stuff.
Sure. I mean, so have you had an opportunity to attend a LAN or coach a team attending a LAN since you looked more into that like sports psychology and nutrition aspect?
Um, no, I don't. No, because I TSM team wasn't amazing. Didn't go to many lands with that. They didn't go to many lands. I didn't attend any lands with them.
hmm
And then Overwatch was too new to be a super LAN game at that time.
Sure.
mostly online.
So I'm
But
curious,
no,
do you think that's something that will add, a lot to, what you have to offer as a coach now with that, under your belt? How do you think that interplays with actually going to a LAN center? Because, notoriously the food can be bad, like you were saying. The conditions can be kind
yeah,
of,
it's never ideal.
not ideal.
Yeah. I think especially for this team, RBG, I think I have the most line experience, or at least in terms of like big stages and that sort of stuff. So I think there's a lot you can do to prepare at home before you go to a LAN, so that once you get to a LAN, you're not, oh no, I've never been uncomfortable before, whatever, and I'm just not
Uh-huh.
gonna play as well they usually do, right? So I think whenever RBG CS:GO goes to Atlanta, I think we'll be well prepared for that, just based off like my experience and a few other people, players' experience at LANs, and like we can practice sorta at being at a LAN online. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting take for it though, because I haven't heard that one as much, just because like most of my LAN conversations revolve around Rocket League,
Hmm.
and that game changes so much when you're on zero ping next to one
Yeah, for
another.
sure.
But
Yeah,
that'll
that's
be
like
really
that's
interesting.
like go
Hmm?
for it. Go for it.
Yeah, no, that'll be really cool.
Sure.
So I'm curious, as much detail as you're comfortable with giving, what does it look like for you as a coach for these games that are all scheduled online? They're all through ESEA.
Hmm.
Like, what does a typical day, like a game day, look like for you? Like this evening, it's what 4 or 5 hours until game time tonight. Like, what will that look like for you and the team?
So I'll do myself first, and I'll do the players. Usually, we get the map 48 hours before um, game time.
Mm-hmm.
So we got the map last night. We know what map we're playing. Not last night, 2 nights ago. So yesterday I did prep, watch the other team's demos, figure out weaknesses, figure out tendencies they have, get some stats of like pistol round stats, what side they favor stats, and just like for myself get a general idea of like what we're playing against. So I'm not surprised in game. So I
Mm-hmm.
think it's fine for the players to be surprised in game, but for me, I should be well enough prepared where nothing really surprises me, and I have answers for everything that they're going to do or they could do. So I get that already yesterday, and then today is just double checking all that stuff, making sure that stuff's all correct, and then just getting in the right mindset, getting ready to coach, have a good dinner before the game, and just make sure we're all good.
Sure. And then as far as like what you walk through the players for the day.
Players usually we scrim either 2 hours before or an hour before the match just to get the teamwork warmed up, because they can warm up their individual aim like DM, retakes, that sort of stuff. But it's really important to warm up our communication, warm up our team play, warm up our strats, all that sort of stuff, so we're not making mistakes in the actual game. So we do that, and then if we scrim 2 hours before, the hour between the scrim and the match, they'll use as individual warm up. We'll talk about some other stuff while they DM. They'll meditate. Um, they'll get food in their body, get water, that sort of stuff, and they'll just do what they need to do to be in the right mindset, the right state to play the game at the top of their ability. And then about 10, 15 minutes before the game, we really get into what the team captain and I have planned for in terms of counters and like what reads I have, and get them on the same page as I am. And then after that, it's game time, and it's just play our game, adapt, and win the game.
Sure, sure. Evidently, it's worked out to plan so far.
For
Um,
sure.
so I know for myself and maybe for some of the folks at home that aren't as knowledgeable about Counter Strike, and I know we've got at RBG we've got a huge fan base for Rocket League, and we're trying to grow that and convert some of those fans into additional fans of our CS:GO teams, our Hearthstone teams, things like that. And for maybe some folks at home that see this and aren't as familiar with the play style of CS:GO, because it is a little more dynamic with the round structure, with the overtime, with weapon buys and the economies and all of that. What kind of like a brief breakdown would you give for like the general, flow of a map or of a match, like for a single game?
So I like to I like to think CS:GO is a lot like American football,
Mhm.
whereas there's the offense, there's the defense, and then there's also plays that each team do, and like that's sort of like the rounds, and then basically in American football, nothing really. Once you see something once, nothing really should that same thing shouldn't surprise you again later in the game. So we take that ideology in the game, and then like once the game starts, we play our game at the start of it, and then once we get a kind of idea of how they're playing it, whether it be fast, whether it be not using nades much and just dry peeking, whether it be playing super fast and trying to get kills early, or however they're playing, we make sure to adapt to that and play sort of change our game, but still play our game and just adapt to how they're playing, just so we can straight counter it. And that's usually near the end of the half. And then once the half swaps, you do the same thing: play our game at the start,
Hmm.
adapt, and then play our new play style near the end.
Right. And just as far as like how that timeline kind of looks like, so the early game, are you talking about, you're feeling out how the other team is playing, as early as like the pistol rounds, or?
So pistol rounds are hard. I feel like there's only a few, maybe like five strats teams use for each map
Hmm.
on pistol rounds. So you can't really feel it out there. It's more of how they play their first gun round when everyone has rifles, and then maybe their second around the third gun round, you'll start seeing more adaptation, more changes to our default playstyle, just so we can counter that much easier.
Sure. And just for the folks at home who might not quite be sure what we're alluding to, so the games, like how many rounds the games go, what those rounds usually look like, that
For
kind of thing,
sure.
just briefly.
So there's two halves, 15 rounds each half. It's played best of 30, right? So it's
Hmm.
first one at 16,
Yeah.
right? So you start with pistols, start with $800, start with pistols. Um, then the more you get kills, the more you win rounds. Even if you lose round, you get money. So all those things give you money. And around round three, maybe around four, you start seeing like the full buys where everyone has the guns they want, the nades they want, and that's where how usually the rest of the half is played out. And then once you get to round 16, we swap sides, do pistol, and do this whole thing over again.
Right, right. So that's where all the economy picks come in, and I
For
mean,
sure, yeah.
it's a different kind of thing. I mean, it kind of comes back, to link it to Overwatch a little bit, and like the ultimate economies, and you
Hmm.
can't ever quite count on when you're gonna have an ultimate up, so you can't always, draw
For
out those
sure.
set plays. But that similarity, like how dynamic of a game CS:GO can be based on, and especially like exchanging weapons and things like that. You don't necessarily have to pop off yourself to have enough money to buy the gun if your
Yeah,
teammate did.
exactly.
Or that's really interesting. So, what does it look like for you as a coach when you start getting into those games that go beyond 30 rounds?
Yeah, those are confusing, I'd say, because you're never sure if the enemy team is going to be like, "Hey, we're playing too crazy. Let's just go back to our standard way and play our game how we were playing at the start of the half." And and on the contrary, you never know if they're going to be like, "Oh no, we need to play completely counter to what the other team is doing." So it's really hard as a coach to figure out exactly what your team should be doing, whether it be standard again or counter or a different playstyle all in itself. So it gets kind of luck based, but not really. You can sort of get a tell of what they're gonna do, but that also leads back to like preparation and being able to understand of like how they think and that sort of stuff.
Sure. So, I mean, literally speaking, because I don't actually know how does overtime for CS:GO work. So like for example, on the 25th of September, we played Front GG and won the match 22-20. So
Yeah.
obviously, there's an extra 12 rounds of play that got in there some
Yeah.
way.
So how it works in OT is if both teams are tied 15-15, we go to OT. How it works is best of it's first one to 4 rounds, right? So they
Mm-hmm.
play 3 rounds offense, 3 rounds defense, right? First to get 4 rounds wins. You get max money at the start of the round. So you play 3 rounds with max money. There are scenarios where you can not have enough money in the last round, but usually it's 3 rounds of everyone having the guns they want, right?
Right.
So we play those 3 rounds, we swap sides, play potentially another 3 rounds, right? If it's tied again, so like both teams got 3-3, so it'd be 18-18, then we do the same thing over again. Play another 3 rounds offense, three
And the
rounds
blood pressure
defense.
just goes up and up and up and
Yep,
up.
exactly. The more of those that happen, it just gets crazy.
Yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. We were talking a little bit before we started filming, and that some of the games lately have been quite close, haven't they?
Yeah, they've been more stressful than I would like. I'd rather all the games be 16 nothings, but it is what it is.
Well, fair enough. We can't always get all of our wishes granted in that regard.
Exactly, exactly.
Um, so I'm curious if you feel comfortable with it. Just going over our roster a little bit and talking about like who these guys are, what positions they generally play, and like kind of what that means, or just giving a general feel for like how does this roster feel, in comms and in play together, like just
For
their
sure.
personalities and things like that. Obviously, I chose you here this afternoon to come represent the CS:GO team.
For sure.
So we can't have all 5 of our folks in here at once to represent themselves.
Yeah,
But
it'd be a bit crazy, but yeah. So average age of our CS:GO team I think is 17. I think they're all 17. Maybe one of them's 18. Not completely sure.
that's wild to me.
Yeah, no, he's pretty young. So I'll start with our team captain, which is G Manchu. He's also our in-game leader. So he calls the strats, comes up with the ideas, um, kind of leads them in game and helps keep everyone on the same page, keep the flow going, that sort of stuff. Like he's more of the brains during the game and stuff, and outside of the game. Then I'll go to Walko, who's our more of a support player for our team. Of course, he can still. All these players can frag hard, right?
Mm-hmm.
But he's more of a support player. Helps a lot in mid-round calls where things aren't like ideal, and we need like, hey, we're 3v3 this round. Like, what do we do and whatnot? He always seems to comes up with ideas and helps with that sort of stuff. He also, like I said, is a support player, so he throws a lot of the utility flashes for our 2 entries to go in first, and then usually comes in around third or fourth and helps with that sort of stuff. And then one of our entries is Pony. His main job is basically just to pop heads, really, just to get the kills,
Right.
just do the peaks, whatnot. And get the
Aimbot pony.
Yeah, exactly. And then Hex is our other entry. He basically does the same thing. He's more depends on the map, but usually one of them would go in first on a certain map, and one of them would go in second. And that's just because the first guy more scouts out the site and figures out, hey, this is where they're playing and this and whatnot, and he's just going off raw aim. And then the second guy in is more of like playing off the first guy and then trading wherever the first guy dies from and that sort of stuff. Yeah, that's more like depending on like the map. But you don't have like a set like Pony's not always the first on every map. It's more we just flip the two depending on the map. And then last but not least is Wiz, who's our opper, so our sniper, and he's more just posting up, getting those like crucial kills that we need, making it 5v4 early if we need that, and just like all around like I'd say our anchor, right? If like we need a play to happen, he's always there to make a play, and just like super solid.
Mm-hmm.
And Trace, our manager, does most of the management side, deals with
Oh yeah,
RBG,
he's
all that
always
sort of stuff.
big hype man.
Big hype man. And then we got Maxwell, our sub slash streamer, who
Mhm.
streams all our games for us. Subs if we need them, if someone has classes or something, or some emergency happens or whatever, he's there to play if we need it.
Sure. Yeah, I'm
And
curious, what's that
that's
like
awesome.
a little bit working with, 17, 8-year-olds on such a competitive game?
For sure. I feel like in my experience of coaching, you get one of two young players. You either get the super cocky, closed-minded young player where it's just
Mhm.
like raw aim, and that's what they've done for forever, so that's what they stick with. And on the other side, you get like the super open-minded, super like willing to learn player, and just like understands that, hey, I might think I'm old because I'm 17, but in the big picture, I'm still pretty young, so I should just like open my mind, learn, get everything that I can, and just like become a better person and a player. And I feel like everyone on this team is that side of the spectrum, which is really nice to coach. It makes it a lot easier to coach for sure.
Yeah, I bet. I bet. Who's the comic relief, or is there one? I know when I got to sit down with the
Um,
Rocket League squad, Rapid is just cracking jokes
Rapid's
constantly,
crazy.
and
Rapid's crazy. Um, I'd say Pony and Hext are the comic relief. Uh, they might not mean it, but they're they're young, so they're crazy. So yeah, they do some crazy stuff to
gotcha.
keep it fresh
Right, right. Everybody needs a little bit of fun with the
for
video
sure.
games. We're out here trying to compete. We're trying to get to the highest levels we can be at, but at the same time, it's still a game. Like, we're
For
all
sure.
here because we played the games and we loved them and we had fun and we had experiences along the way that made it enjoyable and memorable. So that's excellent. Well, KJ, we're so glad to have you here. Thank you so much for the time to sit down and talk with me today. I know all our folks at home are going to really enjoy getting to see this and getting to hear it from you. Where can they find you if they want to seek out some of your more of your content, or your Twitter, your Twitch, things
Um,
like that?
Best thing to do is Twitter at Coach KayJay. I might start doing YouTube and Twitch. We'll see. I'm still pretty busy between work and coaching, so that. But everything, all my things are at Coach KayJay.
All right. Well, we've got it down below. Both your images here up for the video, so feel free to follow those links. Tweet out at KJ or at myself, and let us know how you like the podcast. Let us know any more questions that you have for us, things like that we can answer. Keep your eyes peeled because soon enough we will have the monthly podcast coming from the founders, Randomize and Me Swan. I know there's a big Apex tournament going on this weekend, so there will be some updates on that. But KJ, thank you so much for being here. It's such a good time talking with you, sir. And good luck on the games tonight. Hopefully the squad
Awesome.
can make it to 7-0.
Let's hope.